I feel like I'd like to give you a hug.
Yeah, man. Before we start, yeah, absolutely.
Welcome, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
I got you.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I feel held.
Welcome to Beyond Your Wildest Imagination. This is a podcast about life after addiction, where people from the couch and valley share their powerful stories about getting sober, staying sober, and how good life can get. Today on the show, we have a very dear friend of mine. His name is Kirby Freeman, and he's a member of this community and has been for a while. And he's gone from a life of addiction to now giving back to the community, helping others, coaching, mentoring, running men's groups, just to name a few. But we're going to dive in with Kirby today and find out more about his life and his journey and where that's taken him. So Kirby Freeman, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. It's great to be here.
Yeah. I'm really excited for you to be here on the show today. It's actually my honor to have you.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, I feel honored to be here in this beautiful space and to share in a bit of a larger audience my story. And my hope is to create a little bit of impact and change maybe one person, right? And see where that goes.
Beautiful, beautiful. That's actually my hope as well. Having a little bit of impact to even affect one person. That's why I'm doing this. That's why we're doing this. I think myself, I've been through addiction and now it's time to give back. And this is my way to do that. And I know that you're doing that. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and wherever you'd like to start?
Yeah, okay. A little bit of a check-in here. So Kirby John Freeman is my full name. I'm 40 years old. I was born in Calgary, Alberta, July 20th, 1984. And there's many circumstances that have led me to the path of, first and foremost, of addiction or coping, right? Because I feel like addiction at large is coping. And yeah, I saw and learned some really hard lessons in that and got trapped in it. And slowly the pain got so great, I evolved and chose to be a little bit different, to show up in a powerful state, empowered, and transmuting that energy into service. It's a bit of a brief, somewhat disjointed snapshot, but, currently in my field, what I love to do is show up in men's groups, lead men, and in a more detailed approach, what I do in the container is I'm creating leaders within, right? So I feel every man and every woman is to be their own leader, right? Not to follow anybody else, but to have their own sovereignty. So I'm bringing sovereignty to the groups, essentially, which is really powerful for them to lead themselves and their family, right? Yeah, it feels really dear to my heart. I love leading breathwork ceremonies, breathwork sessions. And I've sat in many meditation, Kundalini, lineage trainings, and have studied a fair amount tantric energy, which I see many healing modalities as similar to religion in that the base of all of it is pure. But I feel like the radical people inside of each of these areas can create challenge. So I keep myself open to all, and I take what serves me and what I feel is true to me, and then I proceed without attaching to it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does for sure. I think that there's a number of things that we can latch onto and go down a rabbit hole, and there's all these different facets, religion and spirituality, and like you mentioned, Kundalini and different types of yoga. And sometimes we can narrow into one focus, whereas I think it would be wise, as you said, to pull what you need from each one because they're all pointing to the same thing. And I'd like to speak a little bit to what you had mentioned, like what you're doing now, you're coaching, you're mentoring, and you're trying to help people create sovereignty within their life.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to go back and see, like, way before you ever thought about helping people, and maybe you were in a space where you needed help. And so I know that you're on the show because you had an addiction.
Yeah.
Why don't you take us back to your childhood and what led into that addiction? And because I know, and maybe the listeners know at home, that addiction, maybe some of them don't know actually, addiction isn't just you pick up a drug or you pick up booze and now you've chosen not to put it down. There's a number of factors that lead you into sticking with that and finding that coping mechanism for yourself. And so I'd like you to speak on your childhood and what led you into your path of addiction.
Yeah, thank you for that, Brandon. My childhood was, I mean, if I zoom out at it and I look at it from what the modern world would see it as, it looked really good, right? I had a very successful father in the oil and gas industry. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. I had lots of time with her, which was really beautiful. So it all looked really good, but getting deeper into it as me as a being in that, it was really challenging at times with not having a father that was present because he was working a lot. And I longed for that deep mentorship and to have a deeper sense of presence in him. With that said, I know he gave me everything that he could, and he did what he felt was right in providing for our family. But I didn't feel like that was enough. And that led me to searching for something else, right? It led me to feeling what was around me and what I saw other people were doing to find a deep sense of peace and acceptance. And my family, my mother and father, they drank, they consumed alcohol, which is my drug of choice, is alcohol. And it was chronic, what I saw. It was always happening. Every event that there was, seemingly there was alcohol involved, right? So it really ingrained at a very young age in me that it was okay for me to be consuming alcohol regularly, right? So I witnessed that for a while, and I remember having my first ever like full beer. I think it was at the age of 10 and a half or 11, right in that range. So it was quite young. And I asked my mom, we were in the Dominican Republic and we were having a good time. And my brother went and asked mom if he could have a beer. So I did the same thing and she said yes. So I did. And I had one beer and that was it. And, for me, after drinking that beer, I felt a deep sense of ability to be authentic, right? That I could shed all the layers that were on me and really be free.
Let go.
Right? So it was like, for me, it was finding that freedom. Because I didn't know at that time that I had it in me to just let it go without it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. For sure.
Yeah.
We have very similar stories. I think I had my first drink when I was 11. I was in Japan actually at the time, and we all snuck some sake and stuff out of the vending machines, right? Yeah. But that is a really young age to start drinking. And I think I felt the same thing you did, where it was like that freedom, like, oh, whoa, right? And I also think that your trauma, like that little bit of trauma, sometimes, I wouldn't call it little bit, but it's often overlooked, where you had a father, right? But he wasn't as present and involved. And that's like, for me, I had abuse in my family. But the same thing, it can affect the child not getting that same nurturing effect from the father if he's not there, or any parent, right? And that can lead to, then when you try this alcohol, it's giving you this freedom, it's giving you this feeling of openness, and perhaps maybe you could have had that from your father and you didn't get it, and now you're finding it in this substance. I'm wondering where that led after that first beer and that euphoric feeling. Like, how did that transpire afterwards? When did you have your next beer?
It's a good question. So I took a 2.5 to 3 year break from that point. And it was my 14th birthday that I stole some alcohol from my grandfather, from his liquor cabinet. I stole these miniature Crown Royal bottles, and there were a bunch of them because he loved Crown Royal, and they'd always send a little extra, right? So I stole a bunch of them and brought them home, and it was it was my goal to get drunk on my 14th birthday. So I did, and I got sick, but I felt clear and I felt good. I was with an old friend of mine, and he had no idea what I was planning, but I knew he would partake because I kind of led the dynamic in a lot of ways, right? So him and I sat in my bedroom, and he was, it was a sleepover, so we had a day bed beside it, and we just consumed it and felt again euphoric and really clear. And after that night, I started drinking pretty much every day. I would find ways to have people buy alcohol for me, or I would steal it from my dad, and I would water down his bottles, and he'd have lines on them trying to protect it, and I'd just scribble out the line and do another one because that's what he did, right? So I would just mimic what he was doing. And, it really, I didn't experience like the depressant effect of alcohol right away, because that was, I feel, my operating vibration outside of drinking was the depressed state, right? So the hangover or the alcohol withdrawal, the depression that happens with alcohol was normal for me, right? So I just go back to a state of normalcy. Yeah. And it just continued from that place.
I think a lot of people can relate to that, because you're feeling sad and you try something and it makes you feel better. And so then you go back to feeling sad and you think that is just your normal state. And so you're like, this substance made me feel better. I'd like that substance. Let's do that again. Yeah. It's also perceived in the public's eye as something not bad. Yeah. It might be bad if you are underage, because we've decided there's an age when it's okay, which is a little bit crazy to me, that but it's a moneymaker. And I think that you can get swept up in this idea that taking this substance makes you feel better, and it's fine and it's accepted and everyone's doing it. Your parents are doing it. Your friends are doing it. Their friends and their parents are doing it. You see it on TV. It's everywhere, and it's fully accepted. And so at the age of 14, you just took to it. And that's not an age to make great decisions, especially when you're being influenced by the entire world. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, I just dove in with both feet. It was really clear for me that that's what I needed to do in that time, to cope in that way, because the other way wasn't manageable for me. Right? So there was suicidal ideation and thoughts in that place of, I'm not enough. I just want this to end. Right? And that was really hard for me to sit in. Not wanting to live is a really difficult place to be. Not wanting to live. It's not even not wanting to live. It's not wanting to live with where I was and who I was and what I was doing and what I was feeling. Yeah, it's heavy.
That is heavy, man. I feel you on that. I think when I was your age, I had the same feelings. When I was your age then, I had the same feelings. And to your point, it's not wanting to die. It's just not wanting to live with what's going on.
Yeah.
right? Just wanting that pain to stop, wanting it to end, and not knowing any other tools or avenues how to get through it. And then alcohol makes you feel good, and then you don't feel good, and you're like, well, this isn't working. How did it progress? How did it progress?
Yeah. It started with, a smaller amount, and then it increased to get myself to the certain place of intoxication that I wanted to be in. But there was certain events that it created in my life that were really hard for me. To name a few, impaired driving. I've been charged with impaired driving. Fortunately, I haven't hurt anybody or crashed while impaired, or been caught crashing while I was impaired, which I had happen several times. So I would get behind the wheel while impaired and put my life and the life of people that I loved in danger and jeopardy, which I hold heavy. It's not something that I'm proud of, but it's a part of my story, right? So it's important to share it. From that place, of getting an impaired ticket when I was 17 years old, I got into a relationship dynamic with my first wife. And I met her at a bar that I was working at. And it was a beautiful dynamic opening because we would drink together and party together and have great sex and have lots of fun. And it was, really opening for me. And I would notice in her, and she would notice in me, the depression after. And we leaned into a little bit of meditation and yoga early in my 20s, which felt really good. And I was feeling deep openings in my body that I can reflect on now and witness, tingling in my hands and beautiful things of that nature. But I didn't feel like it was quite enough for me. It wasn't enough for me to make the shift out of what I was doing into a different way, even though my ex-wife was calling me to do that. She wanted it. I don't think she was consciously using those words, but she was articulating herself in a way that it was very clear to me what she was calling in, and I chose not to. So I kept drinking, and I progressively would get a little bit worse, to the place where I was having 15 beers a day to start. And if I was drinking, I would drink a lot more than that. So it was, and this was every day. I wouldn't necessarily start first thing in the morning, although sometimes I would, depending on how hungover I was, because I didn't want to feel the depression anymore. The depression actually, in speaking to it right now, increased in weight as my addiction progressed, right? The depression was harder and harder to manage. And the suffering was deeper and deeper, and there was more suicidal ideation and thinking. And in those times, I'm just reflecting on it right now and like talking to my first wife about it and planning to both take our own lives at the same time, in a certain way, right? It's interesting because I haven't shared that aspect of it very much. So it's a blessing to be able to do so right now, and it's also quite tender in me.
I can feel that tenderness.
Yeah.
Yeah. It must have been a really hard place to be in and a hard place to reflect on.
Yeah. There's sadness that comes through for me right now in it. And the sadness is that I was suffering so deeply and my soul knew that there was another way, and I wasn't choosing that way at that time. Right. So eventually, in that dynamic, I started going, on trips by myself, and I never cheated on my first wife. And I would go away, and then I started not trusting her. And it was a felt feeling more than anything else. And I found out eventually that she was not being faithful to me, and she chose a path of being with this other person, right? Who lived in California, which, it hurt. So that relationship dissolving, I see it as my part was the biggest part in it, in that I showed up in my alcoholism. I didn't heed the call to shift or change. There was true love there. And, I don't know if that ever goes away, right? Because it's still a part of me, and it has shaped who I am. And also witnessing it was a natural completion to the dynamic, which was hard, but necessary.
Yeah. I liked what you said there. I believe that as well, that love is something that grows inside you and you take it with you, and it just keeps growing and growing. So it's not, it made you who you are. I wanted to touch back on something you said, just for the listeners out there, that a lot of people in the Cowichan Valley do, and they see people drinking and driving, and that's the normal around here. And it's not that far. You're just going from the bar to home, and I did it. All my friends did it. We all drank and drove drunk. And when you talk to somebody from a different area, some different areas, that is absolutely absurd. And to us, it was normal. So I just want to touch on it because I myself got in a couple of accidents while under the influence, and I feel very fortunate, like you do, that I didn't kill anyone. I'm not sitting in jail, and I didn't ruin families. It very easily could have happened. And I just wanted to touch on that a little bit to say that, it can happen, and it's really scary.
It's sad that it's become normal in certain areas to drive impaired. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
Kills people. It's one of the leading statistics on how people die is drunk driving accidents.
Yeah.
Many, many people die in that. It's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And your story up until this point is quite heavy and hard, but it's not unique. A lot of people have had similar stories and are having similar stories. There's young 14, 15-year-old kids listening to this, 20-year-olds going through the same motions. And you have spoken a little bit about your journey of addiction, where it was getting worse and worse, and you were drinking more and more, and relationship falling apart. And when did it get to its worst point for you?
It got to the worst point for me was in my second marriage, where we were both drinking heavily every day. And there was verbal abuse happening. There was yelling in front of our children. So I had children with my second wife, a boy and a girl. And it got to a place of not being able to be manageable, I feel, due to how we would show up in front of the kids in such a chronic way. I didn't want to program them to follow the paradigm that I had of myself, right? So it was at a place where, I'm going to repeat this in my children, or I'm going to do something about it and change, right? And it was my children that really were a shining star for me, right? Because I can't force or bring change to anybody consciously. I can speak my words, and if that creates change within, beautiful. So with that said, I couldn't change my second wife, right? I couldn't do anything there. I could just look within and choose a different path for myself. And that was a path of sobriety. And I had a hard time admitting that I was addicted to alcohol. Very hard time, because I saw it as normal. And normal people are doing something. Perhaps all of the normal people that were doing it were all addicted that I saw. But I didn't want to put myself in that box. So I chose to stop drinking for a year. And I made that firm commitment. And I did, right? And every day I would look at my son and my daughter's eyes. and I would feel their need for it, their need for me to be sober and clean so that I can be there for them. I'm here to help bring up the next generation of the new earth, the new world, where we're not strapped down by addiction and coping that doesn't serve us. We get to be free.
It's powerful. I'm so glad that you made that choice, that your children were the catalyst.
Yeah.
And not everybody likes to admit when they've done things wrong. And so I think that's the first step, is looking around and seeing the damage that's happening and doing something about it. Alcohol is a tricky one. It's accepted. And so it doesn't even matter how much you're drinking, you're having fun and you're at the bar and everyone's doing it. And you're like, there's no problems here. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to see that. And thank God you had children and thank God you made that conscious choice, because that's not easy. That's not easy. Mm-hmm. Did you have any tools or anything that you did within that year? I know you said you looked to your children, you looked at them, and that was your grounding force to keep you stable in quitting. Mm-hmm. Was there anything else that you used to help you?
In that first year, not really, to be honest. I made a commitment and I stuck to it. And after the year transpired, I started drinking again.
Oh.
So that wasn't the end of it for me. That was the first glimpse of sobriety. Felt so good throughout it. And then my field was clouded by, I've got this under control. I can do this, right? I'll just have one.
There it
right?
is.
And it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And then I'd have one a day for, 3 weeks. I'm like, I've got that under control. I can have 2, right? And then the 2 turned into 15 again. So right back into that same loop of addiction.
It happens so fast.
So fast. After a whole year of feeling really good, right back in. Like, well, shoot. I guess there's something real here, right? And, I drank again for 6.5 or so months. And then the relationship dynamic started to dissolve. Because after I stopped that second time, my ex-wife continued, right? She wanted to continue partying and drinking. And I didn't want to hold back her free will or her freedom. So I would just let her go, right? As long as she was safe to do so. But there were times that it was challenging for me to let her go because she wanted to drive and she was not in a place to drive. So there was some stickiness there. But I feel like I navigated it well in that circumstance. I feel like I'm getting a little bit off of the question. Can you reiterate, or is there anything coming through for you right now, Brandon?
Yeah, Kirby, I'm interested. What did you see change in your kids during that year? Your relationship with them when you had quit?
I felt in myself a deep sense of presence with them, a much deeper sense than I had ever felt. And we played more, right? We got into it. We played Lego. We built things. We went hunting and fishing, right? We went and spent time in a good way together. Whereas we were doing some of that before, but it was always clouded by drinking. I wouldn't do it unless there was alcohol there, right? So that had my presence. Whereas now the children had my presence, right? I was present for them.
Yeah,
right?
You get to show up for
so,
them, and you get to feel the experience and be there instead of just kind of fade it off in the background while things are happening.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful gift for your children.
Yeah. So that's the biggest change. And then there were others as well that kind of came with that too. And that was, they felt safer with me, right? So safety is huge. to ask somebody to be open if they don't feel safe is really challenging, right? So, to create openness in them, safety must be there first, right? And me not drinking created a much deeper sense of safety because they knew that their mother and I were not going to fight and argue, right? Because I would just go to bed if she went down that hole, right? Which happened often.
It must have been a really lonely and challenging thing for you to do.
Yeah. Knowing that she was, going out and doing all sorts of things, right? That we're not serving her or our family.
It takes a lot of strength.
Yeah.
And a lot of commitment, day in, day out for a year.
Yeah. I didn't want to be in that life anymore. We had everything. A fancy house, lots of money. Kids, it all looked good on paper. But it was not good inside. Right? And that's what I needed to shift.
Ultimately, that's what matters. And you can push things away long enough. And for people listening out there, I would urge you to look inside and it won't take long to just feel is the life I'm leading with all this alcohol, is it the right path for me? And I would urge you just have a look. I don't have the answer for you, but it's there. It's there. And your story sheds light on that there's that bit of freedom, that connection, that groundedness, that presence that was missing. The cloud's gone, right? And so you moved into 1 year and then you went back, and that's relapse. That's what happens. You get this inkling that I've done it. Mm-hmm. I'm fine now. So I can have a drink and I'm fine. Yeah. And then you have another and another and another, and boom, you're right back in there. The same despair, the same depression. Sometimes it can be even worse because you've done all that and you've had that clarity, and now you feel like a failure going backwards. How did you get yourself out of that? And how did that shift for you? Where was your rock bottom when you said, that's it, I'm done?
That's a good question. So my rock bottom, I don't know if there's actually a rock bottom for me. It was a slow progression into stopping, right? I knew after that 6.5 months that heavily drinking could not happen for me anymore. There was just absolutely no way that was going to be something that I would do, because I was going to kill myself if I continued it, right? So I chose consciously to not go down that path. But I still was a little bit deluded as far as what my relationship to alcohol was. And I would have an occasional drink, right? And it was a relationship dynamic that I had after my second wife. And I found a lot of clarity in that. And I was with a woman who was quite evolved and conscious, right? And she called me in. Her and I drank together occasionally. But she was really fiery. And she would not put up with my BS. And I lied a lot to cover up many different webs and entangled stories that I had. And she saw right through it every single time. And that was really not comfortable for me. Yeah, so that pushed me down to a place of, why am I lying? What am I trying to hide? Asking myself these questions. And at the root of it, it was my authentic self. I was afraid of it being rejected. My authentic expression, and I would not be liked or loved. So in realizing that, I chose to show up and be authentic to my expression, to my day, to who I am, to where I am in my life.
It's lucky that you had somebody to show you that reflection. And not everybody gets that, but everybody does have that internal compass that tells them what's right or wrong. And so it sounds to me like you went inside and started to look inward and really asked some questions, some hard questions about yourself, and you probably got some really hard answers. And what did you start to do to change your life at this point?
Good question. So the first thing that I did, and she made me do, this is my ex, not ex-wife, the one after, my second wife. She said, we're done unless you join a men's group. Just straight up. She's like, this would benefit you. If you don't do it, we're done. Like, okay, I'll do it.
Okay.
Right? Because I was receiving validation through her loving me. I didn't love myself. I didn't know that at the time. Right? So I joined the men's group, and I met a mentor of mine who I cherished dearly, and he was the leader of the group. And he took me under his wing, not right away. It took a little bit, and our energies really matched, and eventually he took me under his wing. And I'm still in that group, and I lead that group now. So came from a place of not knowing how to share who I am, where I am, evolving to a place of ability to lead that group. So that was the first big step. A secondary step was sitting in ceremonial containers, right? Sitting in breathwork containers and some medicine containers, psychedelic medicine in particular, I found to be really grounding and expansive. And challenging too. You know, sitting in like a deep somatic breathwork experience, a lot comes up. A lot of anger comes up. You know, screaming. I learned how to emote and how to be authentic with the emotion that I was feeling and not have to attach to any story around it.
Yeah, you're learning to love yourself. I think drinking for so many years or using drugs, you're pushing down, pushing down, pushing down. And without that and all these questions coming up and bubbling up, who am I? I don't really like who I've been. I don't really like who I am. I want external validation from other people, other things, everything. And then you are now faced in these ceremonial containers. And in men's group, you're talking about things, you're being held, you're being asked internal questions that you can't hide from anymore. With alcohol, you're like, oh, I need to stand in this fire and take the heat. And it sucks, but it's necessary for growth. And like, I see the growth in you now, fast forward many years, but what was that process like for you? Like, you spoke that it was very challenging, but it was also beautiful. And I just want to know, like over the course of, was this over a course of years or months? How did it lead into what you're doing now? Like, how did that story progress for you?
Yeah, so it came from a place of the curiosity in my mentor in the men's group asking me if I wanted to become a lieutenant in the group. That was the first spark. I was also working with him in a one-on-one container, and that container was to cultivate purpose. That was the objective, sovereignty and purpose. And I was asked very difficult questions. He would ask me what I wanted to do, and then he would ask me why, right? I think there were 7 iterations of why, and it would get me to a specific place, right? So it was really interesting to sit in that. And, you know, that was a spark to call me in. And there was some, like, the deep struggles that I would feel and see in, like, the breathwork ceremonies and the other containers that I was in, was the truth of who I was being. And not being aligned with who I was. And that was unmanageable for me. It just felt wrong in my body and skin. And like I was being wrong. Like I was just not showing up in a way that was honoring me or anybody around me.
Wow. So you're seeing your authentic self, and you're seeing all the masks that have been shrouding and hiding your authentic self, and separating the two and seeing the distance from them.
Yeah.
And having to navigate to get, I guess, to yourself, going back to yourself, to find yourself again. Once you were asked to be a lieutenant, is that the terminology you said? To be a lieutenant in there? Like, that's a huge step where now you're starting to help lead. I imagine that's what it is.
Now I'm leading.
Was that what a lieutenant was?
Oh,
though?
yes. So in the lieutenant position, it is, there's several roles and it's dictated by the captain, right? And the role that I assumed was keeping the time. Initially, it was all I had to do was keep the time. So it was a really slow, like inching in. Like, I can do that.
Okay.
And I get $50 off a month. Perfect. Right? And then the responsibility slowly added as my ability to hold more did. Right? So from there, it went into, I would lead a practice at the beginning of the meeting, a breathwork practice, some form of embodiment. I would lead the check-ins. I would be sharp with the people in the group as far as you're going into story too much, right? You need to stop there and what's beneath it, right? Because the story, I feel, is spoken so that we can feel more deeply what is happening, right? And story is important sometimes to unpack, but the more important part is the somatic experience of what is happening in the body.
Right. I can agree with that for sure. We don't, we often continue the story, and the story is justification as to why we're doing certain things, and it neglects the feeling in the body and what's actually transpiring in this moment right now. It can keep you in the past or in the future. I think the somatic piece it's big for me also. When I started to get clean, I needed to start to feel, to heal. And, for myself, I used exercise, I used talking, and writing and doing all of those things. It sounds like in men's group, you did a lot of talking and a lot of healing. What are some of the other things that you did in men's group that were healing?
Getting in the ocean together in the winter, right? So consciously suffering, consciously putting ourselves in difficult containers, knowing that duality exists, and consciously doing that almost created a quicker path to light, right? So it was like, we knew we were safe in what we were doing. We weren't doing anything that was wild, and we researched a lot of health benefits. I researched a lot of health benefits of getting in cold water. So yeah, we would get in and we would sit there for a couple minutes and then we'd go for coffee after. And it was deeply bonding. So finding men in my life that were on a similar vibration to me was a huge part, and having a mentor in the captain of my men's group, that was the North Star that really helped transmute me from a place of addiction into sobriety, right? It's like support is absolutely necessary. Finding
a mentor can be really impactful, or some beacon to look to that's, quote unquote, doing it right. They've found the path. And during having these men's groups and, cold dipping and doing hard things and bonding together, and especially for the men out there, we'd like to hold our feelings in and not talk about them. I'm here to tell you guys that are listening, like, we have feelings, we're human. And there are men's groups out there, and I would urge you to reach out and find one. And if you can't, maybe start one. Just a couple of guys, just start talking about your feelings. It can really help propel you in the right direction. Even if you're still drinking or you're still using drugs, like, that can start the process for you. So you move from being a lieutenant and, timekeeper, moving through the ranks, I guess, as you'd call it.
Yeah.
And how did that bring you into what you're doing now? Like, I'd like to hear about that.
Yeah. Good question. So as I started progressing through ARCA, which is the men's organization, the men's group organization that I'm a part of, I was asked by my mentor whether or not serving in a deeper way was aligned for me. And that was a clear yes for me. So I leaned into what that could look like. And he asked me, he said, what do you love to do? And I said, well, I love to be with people. I love to hold people. I feel like I'm a natural healer. And I saw what he was doing with me, and it felt really good. And so I said, I kind of want to be like you, man. You know, I want to show up in a similar way to you. And so that was me asking for more, opposed to him offering it to me, which was organically happening anyway, right? So as I asked for more, he gave it to me and gave it to me. And he got to a place where he no longer wanted to be in the group. So I took over the captainship of that men's group. And somewhere in the middle there, I don't remember the exact date, but I started coaching clients. And I started with my first client and I coached him for free. I said, you've got 4 free sessions. And then if you like what you see and you like the change that you're embodying, keep coming, right? And he did. And he did. And he's still with me today, years later, right? So the impact that this can have is huge. And yeah, it feels really soul-filling to know that I'm showing up in my purpose in this way.
So you're now running that men's group. That was years ago. And that started your coaching for you, your one-on-one mentoring. What other things are you doing? You mentioned breath work. You mentioned other men's groups. Just maybe a snapshot of what Kirby's doing today.
Yeah, beautiful. So currently I have 3 men's groups that I'm leading. One of them is with a Brotherhood that I mentioned earlier. And 2 of them are groups that I have created. They're not a part of that. They're a part of my own entity, which is really beautiful. I have 2 youth groups that I'm also leading from the age of 18 to 22 years old. And it's so wild to see these little, younger minds and how evolved they are already. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole right now, but it's really impactful, I feel. And I also hold breathwork space. So I'll sit with one-on-one clients or groups of people and guide them through a deeply connecting, peaceful breathwork session. What I love to offer with that is talk therapy before, right? Going through and processing something before delving into what the body is to release. It can create a deeper sense of intention into the breath container, right? Which feels really aligned for me. So those are my North Stars as far as what I'm doing right now.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I've actually had the privilege of experiencing one of your breathworks, and it was amazing. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for holding that space for me. I see your face lighting up right now when you're talking about it. What does that feel like in your body now to be doing all these amazing things and holding this space for people and youth especially? How does that feel like to Kirby?
It feels aligned and peaceful. It feels right. It feels like I am finally serving my soul's purpose that I was so disjointed from, and my will to live and honor my body has exponentially increased in that.
Do you love yourself now?
I love myself. I tell myself every day in the mirror that I love myself. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel it's worth mentioning a couple points that are really impactful when we're trying to change the way that we see ourselves and change the way that we're feeling.
Yeah.
And one is a gratitude practice. It's so simple, but many people know this and they don't do it. Do it. Do the gratitude practice, right? It's easy. Go through 5 things that you're grateful for right before you go to bed and right after you wake up. And what this does is it puts our mind into that vibration of gratitude for our subconscious period, our sleep period, right? So that we can slowly be chipping away at the years of programming that we've been through, replacing it with gratitude, replacing it with truth. So I do it before bed and when I wake up. which is hugely impactful for me.
That's the time when our subconscious is the most like awake, I guess, or right before bed and right when you wake up. And so you're kind of programming yourself. And I like that gratitude piece, because a lot of people, like when I first heard about gratitude, I was like, yeah, I'm grateful for lots of things. What is making a list going to do? Mm-hmm. Honestly, I was like, how's this going to work? And you just keep doing it, and you make a list, and you just fake it, and you run through the list. Like, I like the birds, I like the trees, I like whatever it is. I like my family, I like my bike. Mm-hmm. And the list keeps going, and you keep doing it. And then it starts to fill your heart, and you start to really feel, I really do love this thing. I love this person. I love, and it grows and grows inside you. And that feeling, that really good feeling inside of you starts to get cultivated. And for myself, that gratitude practice was life-changing. It has been life-changing. Just driving down the street, and I burst into tears out of gratitude, out of nowhere. I was like, whoa. Yeah. And that was it. That didn't happen in the practice, but it translated to my life. Mm-hmm. And so I really think that's an important piece. And I thank you for sharing that. Mm-hmm. That's really important.
Yeah. You're welcome.
What was the second thing? You said there was two.
Mm-hmm. So it was changing the way that I spoke to myself, right? If a person wants to change how they're showing up, change the way that you talk to yourself with affirmations. So I love myself. I am grateful. And whenever I would witness myself saying something along the lines of, even to my children, please don't drop the dishes when you're carrying them to the sink, right? The probability of them dropping the dishes is greater than if I say, be mindful with the dishes as you carry them to the sink, please. Mm-hmm. Right? So changing the way that I speak to myself, and even deeper, maybe not deeper, but similar, is changing the way that I speak to others. What am I saying? How am I articulating it? What energy do I have behind it that is fueling me here? Right? And words become reality. How we think and feel about ourselves becomes our reality, right? Through manifestation. And it can be in the worst ways or the best ways. As sovereign beings, you get to pick.
You do. You do. I think those are very powerful. I'm losing the word for it. Very powerful tools to utilize each day to cultivate loving yourself, loving others, being grateful for things in your life. And that can lift the depression that some people are sitting in just by starting with, one good thought about yourself, one grateful thing, just trickling in step by step by step. And that's how you climb mountains, right? One step at a time. I am curious, through all of this, and I'm sure the listeners are, how did your family dynamic change as Kirby was evolving and blossoming?
Yeah, good question. So how did the family dynamic change? Well, I took my TV down, and that changed a fair bit in the family dynamic, because we watched a fair bit of television. And, in a bit of a bigger way, like, there was, again, back to the similar sense of presence when I took that year off. I was more present. And doing all of these tools and showing up regularly with honoring myself, it created a capacity for more presence. So I was able to hold more and be present with it, right? So I think, it sounds simple, but presence was the biggest shift that I saw in the dynamic. I feel that presence is like the biggest gift that we can give to somebody, our presence.
Just to be here now.
Right now.
As Ram Dass would say.
Right now.
Yeah.
Right? What else do we have?
Yeah.
Stories. All of them.
Yeah. And your relationship with your children, how did those improve? If they did.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter feels so safe with me now. She will tell me anything, right? Just raw and vulnerable and tears. And I'm not saying all of this because I feel I'm a perfect dad, right? I feel I have my areas that need improvement, but I show up and I hold myself in it, right? Which creates a deeper sense of safety for her and for my boy. right? They see me not being perfect and what to do when you're not perfect. So it's a beautiful teaching and lesson, right? So I think that's a big part of it is now metaphorically, I see hardship and triggers as lessons.
Yeah.
The quicker that I can see that, the quicker the lessons can be learned by me and my children, right? The quicker they can see it, the quicker the lessons will come through and evolve, right? So a deeper sense of presence in me and a deeper sense of presence in my children has created a nuclear family that is tighter, right? That we're not afraid to say something because we're going to, dad's going to fly off the handle. Doesn't happen, right? If I don't like something that they say, I tell them in a calm way, not fueled by anger, right? It's like, I didn't like how that felt. It's beautiful.
It is. You're doing an amazing job, Kirby. You're building strong children that are going to be able to stand up for what they believe in a kind, caring manner, which I feel that you do. You hold people in that presence and that moment, and you also do it with respect and authority, but grace and kindness at the same time, which not a lot of people do. So I think that's a beautiful life you're living. What other tools do you use on a daily basis and practices for yourself?
I don't share this often, but I feel called to right now. And the first thing I do in the morning is I wake up and I sit in meditation and I call in the directions. So I speak to the east, south, west, and north, above, below, and heart center, and really feel what that's like for me to be honoring myself in that and all of the things that are around me, the earth, the water. I feel that to be really sacred and really special. It's a connection with my higher power, essentially, which is really sacred to me. After that, it depends on the morning, but I go either for a workout, cold dip. So working out and being physically active is something that I do for myself, honoring this body, right? I feel that humans, and once I made this shift, it was quite beautiful, shifting my thinking into I'm living this life, or my soul's purpose is here to take care of this human body, right? Just to take care of it, to honor it. And witnessing that allowed for me to make the changes. So yeah, I will work out. I often get in the water. When I work out, I get in the ocean. Yeah, just after. So I drive straight from my gym down to the ocean. And then, so cold water for me allows for me to have more aliveness in me. Like I feel alive when I get out of the water. I'm embodied. I'm out of my head and in my body fully. So I'm feeling in a deeper way, which feels helpful for me, right? I love sound. I love playing music. Both of these I find similar in impact. And the music that I play and I listen to is not linear. It's all of it. I like good music. If it sounds good to my ear, I listen to it. Right? So I really also like to eat good food and honor my body with it. And I mean, there's a little bit of energy around sharing this, but I love sugar and candy. And I'm really trying to not be eating like gummies, for example. Like I love them. And that's a place where I can sharpen a little bit, right? But I don't want to sharpen into too much rigidity. I want to be free to have some of these things if I want to, right? So it's an interesting balance of like, as you mentioned earlier, the sharpness and the compassion, right? The loving compassion and the fire. I think that's where the energy's balance. It's like the yin yang, right? It's the line in the middle where they balance, and it's not a straight line purposefully.
I think that's amazing that the practices that you have, they can help in so many ways. Like the cold dipping, I do that myself, but you can have any number of practices that keep you embodied. And I think that's really important to stay tapped into your body and tapped into the present moment and feeling alive and feeling that we are in this human body and we are here, as you said, like our soul's purpose is to like take care of this body, nurture it with good food, healthy exercise, like clear our mind, speak our truth, all of these things that keep us in alignment, that keep us from going back to a dark path. And you've made it on the other side. Do you ever think about drinking?
Yeah, I do. But it's not in a way of really, like, I know that I won't, but it comes up. Patio season is one for me. It's like, I see people having so much fun on the patio. It's like, but are they talking about the weather? It's like, I want to go deeper than that.
Yeah.
And very quickly, I come back to a place of, that's not right for me, because I want depth. I want to feel, right?
Yeah. I think it's important to notice that, and like what you said, you make mistakes and you're also accepting of those mistakes. And like, just to say the candy, like maybe candy's not a mistake, but it's something that you'd like to change, but it's not something that you have to change, and you're just aware of it. And it is a delicate balance. It's, holding yourself in the right way in so many ways, and also being like, okay, I got this one thing over here, it's not so bad. And having these things to work on throughout our lives they're just what you spoke about earlier. They're these lessons, and the sooner we can see that reflection of ourselves and know that this is something for me to work on here, it's something for me to look inward and be like, I need to change this. Why am I doing this? And those are all really important reflections. And I think that the work that you're doing now, the men's groups and people out there just going to talk to other men, talk to other people that have done it. You found a mentor yourself. Now you're mentoring others. In the NA groups or AA groups, you find a sponsor. It's the same thing, going out and finding somebody that you can look towards that has done it. They're ahead of you. It's the same in sport. You want to like train, and you want to train with the best, so you become the best. You need to look at who's doing it, and you need to reach out and find out how they did it. And that's what we're doing here on this podcast. And I think your story has shed light on how you did it, and it's been a beautiful journey. And if you had a message for those out there that are still struggling with alcohol, struggling with drugs, struggling with their emotions, struggling with suicide or loving themselves, what would you say to them?
If not now, when? Get curious. Be gentle with yourself. Change takes time. Feel who you are. Feel your soul. It's time to come back home. Love yourself.
For the viewers there, we're just both getting a little emotional. And I think that because we both know how important it is, there's a lot of people out there struggling right now, and we were struggling. And if anyone's out there listening, we're just normal people. And if we can do it, you can do it. You just got to reach out. And to what Kirby said, like, love yourself and just take a step in the right direction. It's been so beautiful having you on the show today, Kirby. If there's anything else that you feel called to share that we haven't touched on today, now would be the time.
I'd like to share a piece of gratitude for being here, for being invited to come here and sit in this space in a good way. And the change that's happening through this is really beautiful and pure. So gratitude to you, brother.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that you came into my life and that you are open to doing this, to share your story. It can be vulnerable and not an easy thing to talk about. But to your point at the beginning, that your hope is to help just one person and have an impact. I know it will. And I'm ever grateful that you are in my life and you are coming here to share your story today. So thank you so much for being here, Kirby.
Yeah.
I look forward to our many interactions and friendship outside of this as well. See you next time.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Okay.